The galactic network buzzed with disbelief as Captain Zurich Valter's message spread like wildfire across the stars. His voice, cold and firm, echoed through every major empire's communication channels. All empires beware. If you step into human space, your destruction is guaranteed. For a moment, there was silence. Then came the flood of reactions. Some alien rulers scoffed at the warning, laughing at the absurdity of it. Others sat in uneasy silence, their instincts telling them something was wrong. After all, Captain Zurich was no fool. He was a legend, a warrior feared across the Zorveth Dominion. He had conquered dozens of worlds, crushed rebellions, and outmaneuvered some of the greatest minds in warfare. He was not the kind of being who spoke without reason. Yet here he was, warning the entire galaxy about humans. The High Lord of the Zorveth Dominion, Vekrath, watched the transmission with narrowed eyes. His advisors stood around him in a grand chamber, their expressions ranging from confusion to amusement. Has Zurich lost his mind? One of them sneered. This is a disgrace. The Dominion does not bow to weaker species. Vekrath tapped his claws against the armrest of his throne, his gaze cold and calculating. Call him, he ordered. I want answers. Within moments, Zurich appeared on the holographic screen, standing tall in his black battle armor. His reptilian face was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something that made even the seasoned warriors of the Dominion uneasy. You dare spread fear among our people? Vekrath growled, his voice dripping with contempt. Are you telling me that the mighty Zorveth Dominion should cower before mere humans? Zurich exhaled slowly. He had expected this reaction. He had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that they would listen. But he knew the arrogance of his people too well. I speak the truth, he said. You do not understand what you are dealing with. Then enlighten us, Vekrath said, mockingly. What makes humans so terrifying that you, one of our greatest commanders, would issue such a pathetic warning? Zurich clenched his jaw. He thought back to the events that had changed his perception of humanity forever. He had once been like them, underestimating humans, believing them to be just another species to conquer. Then he had seen what they were truly capable of. He had led an invasion fleet to the edge of human space, expecting an easy victory. The plan had been simple. Strike fast, seize a colony, force humanity to surrender. But nothing had gone according to plan. The moment his fleet entered their territory, human ships had appeared like ghosts from the void. Not in overwhelming numbers, not in massive formations, but in a way that defied logic. They moved unpredictably, their technology unlike anything the Dominion had encountered. The first battle lasted mere minutes. Zurich had watched in horror as his fleet, strong and proud, was reduced to burning debris. The humans had not spoken, had not issued any warnings. They had simply eliminated their enemies. That was the day he realized the truth. Humans did not fight wars for power or conquest. They fought wars to end them. And when they did, they left nothing behind but ruin. You still don't understand, Zurich said quietly. The humans do not wage war like we do. They do not seek glory. They do not fight for territory. When they go to war, it is total. If you enter their space, they will not negotiate. They will not hesitate. They will erase you from existence. Vekrath chuckled, shaking his head. I see what this is, he said. You have grown weak. You failed in your mission, and now you cower behind fear. The Dominion does not fear anything, least of all some backwater species that has yet to prove itself. Zurich's fists tightened. He had given his warning. He had done all he could. He had tried to stop what was coming. Vekrath turned to his advisors. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. Let us show Captain Zurich what true warriors look like. Zurich closed his eyes for a brief moment, feeling the weight of inevitability press down on him. They don't understand, he murmured to himself. Then, in a steadier voice, he said the only words left to say. They will learn the hard way. And with that, The fate of the Zorveth Dominion was sealed. The Zorveth Dominion's war fleet moved through the void with the confidence of conquerors. Hundreds of warships, each designed for destruction, formed a massive armada, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Admiral Krovek, a veteran of countless battles, stood at the bridge of the Dominion flagship Fury's Wrath, staring at the vast emptiness ahead. "Humans," he muttered, his voice thick with disdain. "A species so insignificant, yet Zyrek Valter dares to speak of them as if they are gods." He turned to his second-in-command, a towering warrior named Shalvik. "How many ships are stationed at the border?" "Unknown," Shalvik admitted. "Our long-range scans detect movement, but their fleet composition is unclear. They use strange signals, encrypted beyond our understanding." Krovak scoffed. "Typical primitive tactics. Let them hide behind their tricks. The moment we breach their border, they will crumble." The fleet pressed forward, engines humming with power, shields shimmering against the emptiness. They were nearing the first human-controlled system. Every Dominion officer expected the same outcome. They would arrive, issue their demands, and humanity would either surrender or be destroyed. But then, something unexpected happened. A single transmission cut through the void. A deep, emotionless human voice echoed through every Zorveth warship. "This is your only warning. Turn back now, or face annihilation." Silence followed. The entire command deck of Fury's Wrath stood frozen. Krovak let out a short laugh. "One ship, one voice, and they think they can stop the might of the Dominion." "Orders, Admiral?" Shalvik asked. Krovak's eyes burned with amusement. "Broadcast a reply." A Dominion officer tapped into the communication system. Krovak stepped forward, his voice full of arrogance. "Human vessel, we acknowledge your warning," he said mockingly, "and we choose to ignore it. Your species does not have the power to threaten us. We will claim your worlds, your technology, and your people will bow before the Dominion. If you surrender now, you may live. If not, you will be erased from history." There was no response. A few tense seconds passed. Then one of the officers spoke. "Sir," detecting movement. On the large display screen, space itself seemed to shift. At first, it looked like empty darkness. But then, something emerged. One ship. One human ship. It was unlike anything the Zorveth had ever seen. It was sleek, black as the void, with no visible weaponry, no exposed engine ports, just a massive, ominous structure gliding through space with an unnatural silence. It was far smaller than the Dominion warships, barely the size of a heavy cruiser, yet something about it felt wrong. Shalvik's mandibles clicked in confusion. Where is their fleet? This cannot be their response. Krovak sneered. This is either desperation or arrogance. He turned to his weapons officer. Lock onto that ship. Destroy it. The command was executed immediately. The Fury's Wrath and dozens of Dominion warships opened fire. A rain of plasma, torpedoes, and high-energy beams surged toward the lone human vessel. It should have been erased in seconds. But the moment the weapons reached it, nothing. The blasts disappeared, as if swallowed by the darkness itself. No shields flared. No explosions followed. It was as if the ship refused to be touched. The Dominion bridge fell into stunned silence. Shalvik's claws tightened around the control console. That's impossible. Krovak's amusement turned into confusion. Scan that ship. What is it? The officers frantically worked, but the sensors returned nothing. No heat signatures, no energy output. It was as if the ship wasn't real. Then, for the first time, the human ship responded. A new transmission came through, but it was not words. It was a sound, low, deep, and inhuman. A single, rhythmic pulse that sent a shiver through every Zorvath aboard the Dominion warships. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. And then the ship moved. It was fast, far too fast for something of its size. It didn't accelerate like a normal vessel. One moment, it was still. The next, it was among them. The first Dominion battleship exploded without warning. No visible weapon had fired. No energy surge had been detected. The ship simply ceased to exist in an instant. Panic erupted across the Zordath fleet. "Retreat," one captain screamed. "All ships, defensive formation," another shouted. It didn't matter. The human vessel was a phantom of death. It weaved through the fleet, untouched by any attack, appearing and disappearing like a shadow in the void. And every time it passed a Dominion warship, that ship was erased. No debris, no wreckage, just empty space where once there had been a proud vessel. Krovak's breathing became ragged. His mind screamed at him to fight, to take command of the situation. But a deeper, more primal instinct told him the truth. This was not war. This was extermination. The humans had given them a single warning. The Zordath had not listened. And now, there would be no mercy. The Zordath fleet was in chaos. Alarms blared through every warship as captains shouted desperate orders, trying to regroup, to form some kind of defense against the horror they faced. But it was useless. The human ship, if it could even be called that, moved like something beyond technology, beyond physics. It flickered in and out of view, appearing where it should not be, vanishing before weapons could reach it. Every time it reappeared, another Dominion battleship simply ceased to exist. Admiral Krovak gripped the edge of his command console, his claws digging into the metal. His once proud fleet, the mighty war machine of the Dominion, was being unmade before his eyes. "Sir," a communications officer turned toward him, fear written across his reptilian face. "We are losing ships at an exponential rate. Our weapons," he swallowed hard, "they are useless." Krovak felt something he had never felt before in his long years of conquest. Terror. He turned to Shalvik. "What do we know about that ship?" Shalvik's mandibles twitched. "Nothing, sir. No energy readings, no heat signatures. It's as if it isn't truly here." Krovak's eyes burned with fury. "Then find something. There must be a weakness." But deep down, he already knew the truth. There was no weakness, no flaw. This was not a warship in any conventional sense. It was something else entirely, a specter of death, hunting them without mercy. The ship reappeared, this time right in front of Fury's wrath. It hung there, unmoving, its black surface like a wound in space itself. No insignia, no visible weapons, just darkness. A deep hum resonated through the command deck, not from the ship's systems, but from everywhere. The very fabric of reality seemed to vibrate. Krovak clenched his jaw as the sound crawled into his skull, pulsing in perfect rhythm with his own heartbeat. Then, a transmission. Not words, not threats. Just silence. A silence so profound, so absolute, it drowned out every noise on the ship. No alarms, no voices, not even the hum of the engines. Just void. And then, you were warned. The voice was calm, cold, inhuman. It held no anger, no hatred, only finality. Krovak's blood turned to ice. "Fire everything," he roared. The Fury's wrath and the remaining ships unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons, railguns, nuclear warheads, all aimed at that single ship. And yet, nothing happened. The moment the weapons touched the human vessel, they vanished, erased from existence. No impact, no explosion, just gone. Then the black ship moved, not like a normal warship, not with thrusters or propulsion. It simply was in one place, and then another. A Dominion cruiser directly behind Fury's wrath disintegrated. No sound, no debris. One moment it existed. The next, it was erased from history. Panic surged through the fleet. Ships broke formation, captains abandoning orders in blind desperation. Some tried to flee. Others simply stopped moving, paralyzed by the incomprehensible force they faced. Krovak knew then, this was no battle. This was punishment. The Dominion had ignored the warning, and now the humans were making an example of them. Shalvik turned to him, his voice shaking. "Admiral, we must retreat." Krovak clenched his fists. Every fiber of his being rejected the thought of running. The Dominion had never retreated. They were conquerors, feared across the stars. But now, they were prey. He forced down his pride. All remaining ships, full retreat. It was chaos. The fleet scattered, warships jumping to faster than light speeds in every direction. There was no coordination, no strategy, just escape. But as Fury's Wrath prepared to jump, the human ship sent one final transmission. "Run." The jump drive activated. The ship was engulfed in light. And Admiral Krovak, the once feared warrior of the Dominion, knew one thing for certain. They had not just lost a battle. They had awakened something far worse. The Dominion homeworld was silent. Admiral Krovak stood on the Grand War Council chamber's central platform, his claws gripping the edge of the massive stone table. Around him, the supreme overlords, the rulers of the Dominion, stared at him in stunned silence. The footage of the battle had played only once, but that was enough. The image of the human ship, a void in space, a ghost of war, still burned in their minds. The annihilation of an entire Dominion fleet without a single shot fired in return was an impossibility. And yet, it had happened. Finally, Supreme Overlord Vrax leaned forward. His golden ceremonial armor gleamed under the chamber's dim light, but his reptilian eyes betrayed something Krovak had never seen before. Fear. "You mean to tell us," Vrax said slowly, his voice unnaturally calm, "that one ship did this?" Krovak's throat was dry, but he nodded. "Yes, Overlord. One ship." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some of the warlords whispered among themselves. Others remained frozen, their expressions blank. "Preposterous." One of the younger warlords slammed his fist against the table. "A single vessel cannot." "They erased us," Krovak interrupted, his voice sharp. "Not destroyed, not defeated, erased. Our weapons did not so much as touch them. Our ships did not explode. They simply ceased to exist." The younger warlord paled, his protest dying in his throat. Vrax studied Krovak carefully. "And you say they transmitted a message?" Krovak hesitated before answering. Recalling that voice, calm, absolute, merciless, sent a chill down his spine. "You were warned." And then, at the end, "Run." He swallowed hard. "Yes, they did." Another warlord, High Strategist Zarn, clicked his talons against the table. "We should launch a second assault, a full war fleet. If one ship stands against us, we will drown them in numbers." Krovak turned to him, his fists clenching. "Numbers." His voice was bitter. "They could erase ships without firing a single shot. You think sending more will change anything?" Zarn sneered. "If we do nothing, we show weakness. The Dominion does not cower. The Dominion has never faced something like this." Krovak shot back. "This is not an enemy we can overpower. We ignored their warning, and they made an example of us." Vrax raised a hand, silencing the argument. "Then tell me, Admiral, what do you propose?" Krovak exhaled slowly, his mind racing. He had spent the entire journey back trying to answer that very question. Now, standing before the Supreme Overlords, he realized there was only one answer. "We send a message to the humans." A stunned silence filled the room. Zarn laughed mockingly. "A message? Are you suggesting we surrender to these creatures?" Krovak shook his head. "No. I suggest we listen." More murmurs. Even Vrax looked unsettled. "You are saying," the Supreme Overlord said carefully, "that we should bow to them." Krovak straightened his back. "I am saying that we must understand them. This is not just a war we will lose. This is a war that could erase our entire species if we provoke them further." Vrax was silent for a long moment. He turned to the other warlords. Leave us. I will speak with the Admiral alone." The warlords hesitated but obeyed, filing out of the chamber one by one. When the great doors sealed shut, Vrax turned his piercing gaze back to Krovak. "You are afraid," Vrax said. Krovak did not deny it. "I am." Vrax leaned forward, his voice low. "You have fought countless battles. Admiral, you have never hesitated before. Why now?" Krovak met his gaze. "Because this is the first time I have fought something that was not a warrior, but an executioner." Vrax studied him for a long moment. Then he let out a slow exhale. "Send your message, Admiral," he said finally. "But if this fails, if the humans do not answer—" His golden eyes darkened. "Then we must prepare for annihilation." The message was sent. Across the vast expanse of space, the Dominion's transmission reached human space. It was a simple request, one the Dominion had never made before. "We seek dialogue." For an empire built on war and conquest, such words were unthinkable. And yet Admiral Krovak had insisted. The Supreme Overlord had allowed it, if only because the alternative was too horrifying to consider. Now, Krovak stood alone in his private command chamber, staring at the holographic display. The message had been sent 3 days ago. The humans had not responded. His claws tapped against the metal console. Every minute that passed felt heavier, like a noose tightening around his throat. He had done everything in his power to make the Supreme Overlord listen. If this failed, there would be war. A war they would not survive. A sharp chime rang through the chamber. Krovak straightened, his breath catching. The console lit up, displaying a single notification. "Incoming transmission. Unknown origin." His pulse quickened. They answered. He pressed the control panel. The display shifted, and for the first time in Dominion history, a human stood before him. The figure was clad in a sleek black uniform, adorned with no symbols or insignias. Their face was sharp, their expression unreadable. But it was the eyes that made Krovak's breath hitch, cold, calculating, utterly devoid of fear. The human studied him for a long moment before speaking. "State your purpose." Krovak swallowed. He had prepared for this moment, but under the weight of that gaze, his words felt like fragile things. "I am Admiral Krovak of the Dominion," he said carefully. "I have been authorized to—" "No," the human interrupted. "Why are you still alive?" Silence. Krovak's body stiffened. His mind raced to make sense of the question. The human had not asked why he had contacted them, nor why the Dominion sought dialogue. "Why are you still alive?" A cold realization crept up his spine. They had let him live. Krovak's breath came slower now, measured. The Dominion had believed their survival was a result of the humans choosing not to pursue them after the battle. But now, staring into the abyss of that human's gaze, he understood the truth. The humans had deliberately spared him. To send a message. Krovak's throat was dry. "Because you allowed it." The human gave the slightest nod. "Correct." The Dominion Admiral forced himself to stay composed. "Then you must understand why I have contacted you." For the first time, the human's expression shifted. A flicker of something, amusement, disdain, crossed their features. "Do you?" the human asked. Krovak hesitated. The human leaned forward slightly. "You believe this is about war, about strategy, about the survival of your people." Their voice remained calm, measured, deadly. "But what you fail to understand, Admiral, is that this is no longer a negotiation." Krovak's claws dug into his palm. "Then what is it?" The human exhaled slowly. "A warning." The word sent a chill through him. The human straightened. "We did not spare you out of mercy, Admiral. We did not leave your empire intact because we feared your retaliation." Their expression darkened. "We let you live so you would understand what comes next." Krovak's heartbeat thundered in his chest. "And what is that?" The human leaned forward, their voice a whisper of finality. "Judgment." The transmission cut. Krovac stood frozen, staring at the empty display. A cold sweat trickled down his brow. The humans had answered. And it was not an offer of peace. Admiral Krovac's claws trembled as he shut down the transmission screen. For the first time in his long career, he did not know what to do. He had prepared for war, for negotiation, for surrender if it came to that. But not this. Judgment. The word echoed in his mind like a death knell. A sharp knock on his chamber door made him flinch. He turned to see High Strategist Zarn enter, his expression tense. "Well," Zarn demanded. Did the humans respond? Krovac exhaled slowly. Yes. Zarn's eyes narrowed. And? Krovac hesitated. He could feel the weight of the conversation pressing down on him. If he told the truth, if he admitted what the human had said, the War Council would not listen. They would refuse to believe it. So instead, he said, they'd refuse negotiations. Zarn sneered. Of course they do. They see us as weak because we did not strike back. We must act now. Krovac's claws tightened against his palm. They still didn't understand. They do not fear us, Krovac said. They did not just refuse negotiations, Zarn. They warned us. Zarn scoffed. Warned us? Of what? Krovac turned, staring at the cold emptiness of space through his viewport. His voice was hollow. Of what comes next? Silence filled the chamber. Zarn crossed his arms, unimpressed. Enough riddles, Krovac. If they refuse to meet, then we have our answer. We take the war to them. Krovac turned sharply. Did you not hear me? His voice was dangerously low. We do not get to decide anything anymore. Zarn bared his fangs in frustration. Then what? Do we wait for them to strike? To destroy us? Krovac's stomach churned. He did not know the answer. But he knew the humans had already made their decision. The question was not if they would act. It was when. A sudden alarm blared through the ship, shaking Krovac from his thoughts. He and Zarn both turned toward the main control panel as the warship's AI voice echoed through the chamber. Warning. Unidentified energy signature detected. Sector designation. Dominion homeworld. Krovac's blood ran cold. He stormed toward the console, inputting commands with shaking claws. The screen flickered, pulling up an external view of their homeworld. And then, he saw it. A single black shape, impossibly large, hanging in orbit over the Dominion capital. No weapons were firing. No fleets had arrived. It was just one ship. The same ship that had erased an entire Dominion fleet without a single shot. The harbinger of annihilation. Zarn took a step back, his breath hitching. That can't be. The AI voice continued, but this time, its tone had changed. Incoming transmission. Source. Unidentified human vessel. A pit formed in Krovac's stomach. He knew what they would say before the message even played. The display crackled to life, revealing the same human who had spoken to him earlier. Their expression was calm, unshaken, unstoppable. And then they spoke. We warned you. The screen cut out. Krovac barely had time to react before the Dominion homeworld began to burn. You said. Admiral Krovac stood frozen, his breath caught in his throat. The transmission had ended, but the message was clear. The humans had arrived. The Dominion homeworld, the heart of their empire, was under siege. Yet no fleet had come, no invasion force, no armada, just one ship. The same ship that had annihilated an entire Dominion fleet without firing a single shot. And now it hung above their capital like a shadow of inevitable doom. Krovac's claws dug into the console as he barked an order. Get me planetary command. I want every defense station targeting that vessel. But even as he spoke, he knew it would not matter. The high strategist stood beside him, his eyes wide with disbelief. They can't possibly think they can take an entire world alone. Zarn stammered. It's a bluff. We have planetary shields, orbital batteries. A single ship is. The planet trembled. A sound unlike anything Krovac had ever heard ripped through space, a low, deep resonance that shook the entire Dominion capital. It was not an explosion. It was a warning. The planetary defense grid flickered, the shields shimmering, then collapsing. Krovac's blood ran cold. Impossible. A ripple of black energy cascaded from the human ship, washing over Dominion warships in orbit. And then, one by one, their engines died. No weapons had fired. No missiles, no beams of energy. The humans had simply turned everything off. The Dominion's mighty warships, their fleets, their weapons, all silenced in an instant. Zarn let out a strangled sound, his claws trembling. What? What kind of weapon? A new transmission appeared on the screen. The human commander was there again, their expression unchanged, as if this was merely routine. You were warned, they said. You did not listen. Krovac gritted his teeth. What do you want? The human's eyes met his. Cold. Absolute. This is not war. The words sent a chill through the chamber. This is not revenge. The Dominion officers around Krovac stood frozen, their breathing shallow. This is the end. A pulse of energy surged outward. Krovac's display flickered as planetary command lost control. The orbital batteries shut down, the city lights dimmed, and across the entire Dominion homeworld, every ship, every weapon, every defense ceased to function. Krovac fell back into his seat, his mind unable to process what was happening. They had prepared for battle. They had expected a war. But this was worse. This was erasure. He turned to Zarn, who stood motionless, staring at the screen. The strategist's arrogance was gone. His belief in Dominion supremacy had shattered. The human commander spoke one last time. Your species is finished. The transmission cut, and the skies above the Dominion homeworld burned.